And a good Monday morning, or I guess Monday afternoon to you. It's lunch with Claibs and Joe, powered by Gray Bar, driven by Munganass St. Louis Acura. I am Joe Roderick, joined alongside by Mike Claiborne. Claibs, how you been?
I'm good. You know what? I'm not used to this time of the year because normally I'm working, and it's dawned on me I have all this free time. So all I'm doing is going to dinner with people and just hanging out. But it's been fun. But I'd rather be working.
Are we? I mean, that's you need to watch what you're eating then, because
Oh yeah.
people. Yeah, comments. I mean, JT and Mike Marks were talking about it the other day on their show about how you've kept the weight off all these years. Yeah, I don't know if you caught that or not.
I've been able to maintain. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's been fun. And really, it really comes down to just being smarter about what you eat and how much of it. I mean, it's like I gave up certain things. Like I only drink three things: water, wine, and protein shakes. No soda, no beer. Moved back from the fried foods. I still have it from time to time, but it's interesting. When I have it, my body will let me know that I've had it. And it's funny because Friday night I was having dinner with some friends, and I decided to have a fish sandwich, a fried fish sandwich. And man, I'm telling you, it stayed with me for the rest of the night. It really kind of took me off kilter for a little bit. So, yeah, just eat smart. You find something to do every day, workout wise, whether it's a walk or a lift or a swim, you name it. And I don't do the same thing every day. So I try and switch it up just to keep my body honest. So, yeah, it's been good. And it's too expensive for me to change.
Claibs, we are 1 week removed from the Cardinal press conference that happened last Monday. You and I weren't able to do a show last week after that happened. But I know you've heard Rammer and our thoughts on that. And I know we've heard your thoughts on that on various shows around the area. But we are 1 week removed from that. Little bits coming here and there. We know Turner Ward won't be back. Do you expect there to be just kind of a big happening at some point once the Major League Baseball postseason is over with? Or is this just going to kind of trickle through the hot stove of I guess, breakdown and rebuild for what the 2025 Cardinals are going to look like?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. I think that from a coaching standpoint, I don't think you'll see a big change. You may see it, but there's activity with regard to the development of the organization as far as more instructors, more coaches on the minor league level. I also think you'll see some other things that will take place at the winter meetings. I'm of the belief that we're going to see about 4 or 5 guys move on. I think what they're going to do, because you have some guys that have some legitimate value, they're going to try and move those guys. And my concern is making sure if you're going to move a guy, make sure you're moving him to an organization that has good quality players and also players who are closer to being big league ready. So by July or August or whatever, we will see them here because they're that close. You have to make sure you're not dealing with a team that has done poorly when it comes to drafting. You want to make sure that these guys that they're going to bring in are guys that are major league ready, guys that have a real upside to them compared to some of the recent deals. For instance, you make the deal for Flaherty to Baltimore, and we've seen Drew Rom for about 10 games. The other guys we haven't seen at all. You think about I think the best deal that they made was moving Montgomery to Texas, and John King has come in and done a really nice job. I don't know if Sagasi can play or not. I know that some people think he's a really good player. I just don't know where you're going to play him. But you need to go into organizations who have quality talent and they drafted well. And if you go back and look at some of the draft boards and some of the things as far as picks, mock drafts, and see where these guys are, that'll give you a good indication of whether you were able to get a good player or not. But I think you're going to see some guys that we're all familiar with that won't be here next year.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be a 30 for 30 on the 2024 season of Drew Rom or Kenyon Middleton anytime soon. I don't think those are.
Yeah, I think you're right. And you know what? Here's the thing. Middleton, who we know nothing about.
Right. I was on the Sport Trek. I was looking at all the 2025 salaries. I was kind of looking through what the Cardinals have on the books next year. And I saw his name on there, and I was like, son of a bitch. Yeah, he was on the team. Like, we never saw it. Like, that was supposed to be one of these big pickups of, he's going to be a good seventh inning guy. And then it just kept getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. And I got, you know what? Nah, he's not going to pitch it all this year. Just, I mean, one of the head scratchers of the season.
Yeah, he got hurt in spring training. And when we did see him, you could see that he was the guy that was going to fit in the back end of your bullpen. He was a guy that was a seventh or eighth inning guy. And, I think they had plans on him maybe being Giovanni Gallegos. And I think he would have filled that role extremely well. But we didn't see him. So, we'll see him next year in spring training. Our bullpen is going to look completely different than what we saw this year. So it'll be fun to watch how this thing comes together.
One of the things, and Claibs, if we did a show last week, I think it probably would have come out more on the air, but we can kind of break it down a little bit now. One of the things you and I disagree about as far as the 2025 season is, or I guess did disagree about, was how seriously the Reds to the going into the offseason. And the Reds went out. You thought the Reds were going for it. I didn't think ownership was going to take things seriously. And they dropped a bombshell on all of baseball this past week, announcing that Terry Francona was going to be their manager in 2025. That was a huge shock to me 1 year into retirement that Tito decided that he was going to come back and stay in the state of Ohio.
Well, what's interesting about that, he was a guy that the Cardinals had looked at one point, but he had some health issues then, and they kind of walked away from him. And then he feels like he's got himself together and he's ready to go again. And let's face it, everywhere he's been, whether it's Boston or Cleveland, he's made that organization better. He hasn't lost touch with today's player. And again, I'm going to say Cincinnati's a team we all better be paying attention to next year.
Yeah, and that was one. David Bell just couldn't get them to turn that corner with
lost
all the
clubhouse
they had. Yeah,
lost the clubhouse. I think with a guy like Tito, he's going to make guys more accountable. I mean, they were a sloppy team. There were a lot of things they didn't do right. And they had some guys who were really good athletes, but they just didn't get it done right. And I think a guy like Tito, and in this case, a lot of these players probably never heard of him. Okay.
Yep.
They're young guys. They may know about him, but they really had not been around him. And I think that in this situation, he's going to go in there and he may shake it up a little bit. I think you'll see some guys playing different positions on that team next year than what they played this year. I wouldn't be surprised to see De La Cruz in the outfield. I really wouldn't.
Ellie De La Cruz and O'Neal Cruz for the Pirates are two guys I feel like are going to be linked for a while. Came up around the same time in the same division and are both similar. I mean, very tall, athletic shortstops. And you've already seen Pittsburgh make the move to say that O'Neal Cruz is going to be their center fielder moving forward. They've already, they had enough of the errors at shortstop and they moved him out there. And I could easily see the Reds doing the same thing of saying, you know what, the errors at short are getting to be too much. Go play outfield and we'll keep your bat in the lineup and hopefully cut back on those 200 strikeouts a year.
Yeah, I mean, this guy led the league in errors, stolen bases, and strikeouts. I mean,
that is a frustratingly exciting player to watch.
Yeah, I mean, you just don't know what's going to happen next with him.
Right.
So, but here's the other thing about that. People just think you can move a guy to a position and it's going to be okay. Moving a guy from one position to another, especially when you put a guy on the grass instead of the dirt, it's a little bit more challenging. And I know we saw with Jordan Walker, who's still trying to figure out how to play the outfield. I think we're going to see it next year if they elect to put Alec Burleson at first base. I think we're going to see it with him. Position changes at the big league level are not as easy as it appears. It's just the fact that you have good players or good athletes who are able to adapt. But at the end of the day, man, it's a very challenging adjustment that you just don't see happen on a regular basis.
The MLB postseason is in full swing already, well into the AL and the NLDS. The ALDS games 2, they begin later on this afternoon. Cleveland and Detroit in one of those series. And on the other side, in the American League, it is Yankees and the Royals. So 3 AL Central teams making the divisional series in Major League Baseball. Got there probably because they were able to beat up on the White Sox all season long, but still having to go through.
Didn't hurt.
Going through and winning their first round series still is impressive to put themselves in the position they are. So let's talk. Both series in the National League tied 1 game apiece as they shift cities in that. Phillies, man, if the Mets would have somehow been able to pull that off yesterday, that would have been one of the greatest stretches, one of the greatest weeks of baseball that I think we have seen in a long, long time.
Yeah.
For them to not only fight their way to get into the postseason, playing that doubleheader on Monday, and then going and defeating the Brewers in the fashion they did. They came real close to taking 2 games in Philadelphia to start the series. That is a team that just will not quit right now.
No, they won't. But you know what, Joe? You have to think about the Mets have been in playoff mode for, a month or so? So they're just on one of those rolls that we see teams when they get hot down the stretch. They were already thinking they were in the playoffs back in middle September. And they just continued to play and play and play. And you had everyone contributing. That's the thing that today, when you look at your roster, of the 26, all 26 have to make some sort of contribution, whether it's a stolen base or a home run or a base hit or a great defensive play. It could be anything. But if you don't have all 26 going, because every day you go to the ballpark, somebody else is going to be a deciding factor on how you win a game. And that's what the Mets have going for them right now.
And the Phillies, it is really surprising to me when you actually dig in deep to the Phillies right now. Some of the issues that they're having, for as good of a team as they were, had the best, had the most wins in baseball. And when you look at some of the issues that they're having right now, I mean, yesterday in game 2, deciding to go with Edmundo Sosa over Alec Bohm at second base in that game. I mean, you're getting rid of a guy that I think was batting cleanup for you last year in the playoffs, and you're benching him in game 2 of the series, and the ongoing decisions that they're having to make with who they're starting game to game. I mean, it's game 3, Aaron Nola was passed over in game 2 for Sanchez, and we still haven't seen Ranger Suarez either, who struggled down the stretch for them. So this is a team that put together a lot of wins, but has a lot of question marks.
Yeah, but you know what? I've seen that before. I mean, think about 2006 when Tony La Russa didn't play Scott Rowland against the Mets because he wasn't playing well. So you're doing that for a couple of reasons. One, you're trying to shake it up a little bit lineup-wise. You're always looking for an energy guy. And also it sends a message to the rest of the team that, we all have to step up our games. So I'm really not overly surprised by that. I think it happens more than you think, where you look at one guy who can handle it and can deal with it. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't think Scott Rowland was going to handle it when he got benched. But, it turned out to be a pretty good plus for the Cardinals in helping them win a World Series. So Philadelphia is a real head scratcher, man, because I thought they were one of the 3 best teams I saw all season. But, they have not played well the last month of the season. They really struggle to score runs. And when you look at their lineup, you think, well, wait a minute. You got Schwarber, you have the first baseman, Harper. You've got some good middle infield guys. I mean, you and Realmuto. I mean, they have a really good roster. But, man, they were like the Cardinals, man, where they just could not put together a timely hit. And it's kind of caught up to them a little bit.
They, both the other series, too, if you stayed up late last night watching Padres and Dodgers, Padres put it to them last night, setting a record for most home runs, tying a record for most home runs in a playoff game with 6 in that one. And I think all of the tensions that we thought were going to happen, all the bad blood that we thought was going to happen between a Padres-Dodgers playoff series, it already happened in game 2 of that series.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a little upsetting that this is only a best of 5 instead of a best of 7, because it's going to be over in 3 days. But God, watching that last night, just the start of it, Jerks and Profar just absolutely getting into it with the fans from the first inning, robbing Mookie Betts of that. And there's just the tension building and building and building. And then Manny Machado and Jack Flaherty, too, getting into it later in the game. I mean, Jack Flaherty, he put himself right in the middle of this rivalry. He hasn't been there that long, but he's well aware of what the Padres and Dodgers rivalry means.
Well, it's funny you bring that up, because Jack and I talked the other day, and he grew up a Dodger fan, so he understands the Dodger-Giant rivalry, and was kind of like at the beginning of the Padre-Dodger rivalry. And if you think about it, Jack has always been a chirper. He might be one of the best bench jockeys in the game right now. Think about him and a couple of guys he was chirping with in St. Louis, and Lamont Wade Jr. from the Giants. He was chirping with him. I mean, he's always been that guy, even when he's not pitching. So to see him on the mound and chirping with Machado, I was not surprised. I was really kind of amused by it, in how things were going. And, we'll see what happens after this. There was a time when you do some chirping, and next thing you know, you get a fastball in the rib cage. Well, now, because pitchers don't have to bat, somebody else is going to pay the price. So I'll be interested to see what happens next between the Padres and the Dodgers, on where it goes from here. All right, we already know about the chirping. What's going to happen next? Are you going to risk throwing at a guy and getting tossed and creating a bench clearing brawl, and things change in that regard? I'd love to see something beyond the talking, because I'm an old school guy. Hey, you want to chirp? Come, here I am. You don't have to. We don't need everybody else coming out on the field. If you really want it, come on, let's go. And we all learned baseball players can't fight anyway, so it doesn't really make a difference.
Did Flaherty wake up the Padres though yesterday?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think at this time of the year, you don't need a wake up call. You know what you're here for. And while we magnify things as fans and media, well, we get a bigger kick out of it than the players do. The good players worry about playing. They don't worry about getting caught up in the conversation. And I think the best example we saw in the previous series with Milwaukee, with Willie Adames and Jesse Winker. We don't even know what that was about. And then the only thing we know is that, according to some, Adames was on the parking lot. Now, but here's what I want to say about that. Knowing that ballpark, the players' parking lot is on the other side of the ballpark compared to the visitors' bus where they leave from. They're on two different sides. So I don't know what parking lot he was on, because if he was on the home team parking lot, there's no way he's going to see Jesse Winker. So what I heard, I'm like, what parking lot was he on? And here's the reason why I know. I got lost one year in Milwaukee, and I went out. I took a left instead of taking a right, and the next thing I know, I was on the players' parking lot, the home team's parking lot, instead of the visitors' parking lot, or where the bus was. So I don't know the parking lot he was on, but it sounds like it was a fun story, and I think the media ran with it, and as I said, they can't fight anyway, so who cares?
I was, watching Jesse Winker and watching just his antics out there, sliding into second base, not being touched, and saying he got hit in the head, and then crossing home plate and slamming the helmet and screaming. He's one of those guys that you look at and you just think, God, what an a-hole. Like, that guy, annoys the hell out of you. But if he's on your team,
if he's on your team, be another guy, and he's new to the game. That's Pete Crow Armstrong with the Cubs. He's gonna be that guy.
Yeah,
he will be a guy that Cardinal fans will not like, and I guarantee you, as he grows in this game, and he's a Hollywood Westlake guy like Flaherty, and I think all those guys were there at one point or another. It'll be interesting to see how far he takes his act, because he can get under your skin too.
Yeah, that's exactly. I texted that to somebody about how much that, the helmet slam annoyed me. And he, you know what, if he was on the Cardinals, you'd be loving that. And I sat and I thought about it. I'm like, yeah, you know what? You're absolutely right. That's 100%. Tigers and Guardians today. That's game 2. Tariq Skubal on the mound. He has a chance to really kind of put his name up there with, as one of it's already there. He's already one of the top pitchers in baseball. He has a chance to make himself a household name today, going out there and dominating the Guardians the same way he did in that wild card series in the first round. So excited to watch him on the mound today in that game. And then you have tonight, Royals and Yankees, game 2. Rammer and I were talking about that Royals-Yankees rivalry. I mean, me growing up, the Royals were never, that good. I started watching baseball towards the tail end of the George Brett era, so I never really got to see a dominant Royals team. But Claibs, for fans like you, Rammer, that age group, Royals, Yankees, I love seeing the highlights of how much those two teams hated each other back in the day.
Oh man, when Whitey was managing, they were really going back and forth, and it was that kind of East Coast versus Midwest rivalry. People were like, well, I don't even know what Kansas City is. How can I root against them? I mean, it was that kind of rivalry, and Whitey had some pretty good teams back then with Brett, and they had a pretty good bullpen at the time. And they got a little chippy at some points, but nothing like what we see now. Because I don't know if I want to fight anybody on the Yankees. Between Stanton and Aaron Judge, I'm not grabbing either one of those guys.
I don't think you can grab Aaron Judge. I mean, what are you going to do if you run up on Aaron Judge?
You know what I'm going to say? I got you. You got me, big guy. How's your family?
Right.
There's no way. But here's the thing.
Although, hey, Sal Perez, pound for pound, Sal Perez might be up there in that same weight class as Aaron Judge.
He might be, but it's all about size. And Sally is one of the best people you'll ever know in the game. I mean, he's truly one of my favorite players in baseball. Great energy, great positivity. But you make an interesting observation. I don't know if I'd grab him either. But when you look at the Yankees, and I was telling somebody this recently, they didn't, of all the teams we've seen in the playoffs. Hey man, listen, just make sure you don't make a mistake to the guy who hits in front of Soto. If that guy gets on base, Soto is a different player. Judge is a different player. The rest of those guys are batting order, I'll take my chances against. They don't overwhelm me. They don't wow me like some people. And as I've told people, you're caught up in the name, the Yankees, compared to the players. And in their situation, those two guys, if they don't have it going, then they have a good chance of not going too far. And Kansas City has enough pitching to make this more than interesting. I was talking to Tommy Pham on Saturday, and so we were talking about Garrett Cole. He said, you know what? He said, I hit him pretty well. And the first time he had the at bat, he had the RBI and the base hit. They have just enough when you look at their roster to make themselves dangerous. And there's no clear-cut team in this whole playoff. You look at both sides, there's no clear-cut team that's going to go wire to wire. I just really think that this is going to be a fun playoff. And we've already seen how much fun it's been as some teams were upset in the first round. But, if Kansas City beats the Yankees, I wouldn't be surprised at all.
No, absolutely not.
And if Cleveland, the same thing. Cleveland can easily be in the World Series with their talent and their players.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. That one, I mean, whoever, I think it should, Cleveland should be able to get past Detroit. They should be able to win 2 more games against Detroit fairly easily in this. Although, I mean, Skubal could really say, I mean, yeah. he could really change that up today and bring it back down to earth. But
here's the thing, Joe. There's so many new guys on both of those rosters who've never been in postseason play. They have nothing to build on other than what they're doing now. I think Verling was the only guy from Detroit that was in postseason play.
Yeah.
They didn't have anybody else. So, and now they're facing the team that they're familiar with, that's in their own division. I think that makes it even more intriguing to watch how they unfold things.
Rammer and I will be back tomorrow with a Daily Cards Live postseason edition after Game 2 has been played tonight for both of the ALDS series. We'll be on sporadically throughout the month of October during postseason play. We need to take a break right now. When we come back, it's football talk here on Lunch with Claibs and Joe. Powered by Gray Bar, driven by Munganess St. Louis Acura right here on Claibs Online.
Can Gray Bar help my electrical and datacom jobs be more productive?
Yep. Our supply chain services are designed to do just that.
Like job site services?
Yep. We deliver the products you need where and when you need them, no matter your industry.
What if I have technical questions?
Yep. Our specialists are top-notch.
Emergency support?
Yep. Even after hours.
They're a unicorn.
When you need to keep your projects productive and profitable, rely on Gray Bar to help you get the job done right. No unicorns required. Yep, Gray Bar does that.
Back here, Lunch with Claibs and Joe, powered by Gray Bar and driven by Munganess St. Louis Acura. Claibs, Saturday, was real excited to watch Mizzou, Texas A&M. That ended in about 10 minutes into that game, it felt like. I
thought it ended right after the national anthem.
You know what? Hey, no, because Mizzou had a drive going, and that missed pass interference call on that first drive, it quickly changed the momentum real fast because Texas A&M got the ball, ran straight through Mizzou's defense, and Mizzou didn't know what to do after that. That missed call changed the momentum of the game so fast. And it's when you lose that bad, it's tough to blame the officials, but they set the tone early in that one on Saturday.
Yeah, you're right. But here's the other thing. I thought Missouri, and it's kind of a pattern now, they're really sloppy.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of things they don't do well, whether it's penalties, whether it's out of position, fundamentals. There's a lot of things about Missouri that I thought they were going to work through, but they face a good Texas A&M team, and they got exposed. Mm-hmm. And this is something like, as I said, early in the season, they'll clean that up, or they'll do this, or they'll do it. No, they continue to do the same things. And I'm not sure what that says about them, which is why, again, I go back to this ranking, and what a joke that is. And I know, again, people are rooting for the name on the jersey instead of the names on the back of the jersey, the players. And it's not just Missouri. You look up and down. We had a lot of what so-called upsets this past week. I don't know if they were upsets more than the fact that teams were getting exposed because they're playing better competition now. And when you think about the transfer portal and all the other things that go into play, along with when you change coordinators, and you saw a lot of coordinators moving around on defense and offense, and coaches moving around the country in different schools, that also comes into play more than you think. Not just as a head coach, but I'm talking about the position coaches and how they teach the game. And you know what? I expect to see more of this. And I'll say this now. There will be a 2-loss team that will be in the tournament.
At this point, I wonder if there's going to be – I wonder if a 3-loss team could get in there in one of these conferences. Because you look at what we have ahead of us now in the SEC, and some of these teams are going to start beating up on each other. Mm-hmm. You have so many of them right now, and I try to bring up the stand because right now, this past week, you had 5 of the top 11 teams go down, real close to having 6 of the 11 with that Miami-Cal game that happened late night. But you had Mizzou lose, you had Tennessee, Michigan, USC, and Alabama all lose this past week. And Claibs, right now in the SEC, there is one undefeated team in all of the SEC. One team in all of the SEC. We are 5-6 weeks in. The only team that does not have a loss right now is Texas.
Yeah, and some will say, "Yeah, look who they play." So, and I said,
no, they haven't played. They haven't played a good schedule yet. No, they beat Michigan. They won at Michigan,
but we don't know how good Michigan is,
right?
And I think that's the thing that, again, the names you just mentioned are the schools that lost. we know them more of their tradition compared to their program as we know it. And if that makes sense, where there's so many different players that have moved around and so many things have changed that like you have two of those teams that lost, they had brand new coaches, head coaches. You have some other teams that have some transfers that have come in and some transfers that left that really has changed the dynamic of who they're about. So again, as I've said at the beginning of the year, man, I don't pay any attention to these rankings. Now, I think we'll have a better idea after next week on who really is good and who isn't.
Well, Texas now, they had a bye week this past week. This upcoming weekend, they're at the Cotton Bowl against Oklahoma. Red River
That'll be a
rivalry.
good test.
Yeah, this weekend. And then next weekend, they host Georgia. So Texas, you could say that they got through it and they didn't play anybody these first few weeks. But Oklahoma, Georgia, these next 2 weeks will show us who Texas is as that number one overall team right now.
I would agree. I would wholeheartedly agree with that. And that's not to say that Oklahoma and Georgia are teams of yesteryear, but they've been on the battle. They've gone to battle a little bit more than Texas has as far as their schedule is concerned. But that's the great thing about football, man. I mean, it's so different than the NFL when it comes to who are we? And we're starting to see teams now that are trying to make their way into getting in position to get into the tournament, which is where I think why college football is one of the most popular things we have to look forward to every weekend.
And this is what I say. I mean, you mentioned a 2-loss team. You think a 2-loss team is going to be in the tournament. I agree with that. But Georgia, for example, Georgia already has 1 loss on the year. Mm-hmm. Upcoming on their schedule, they still have Texas, Ole Miss, and Tennessee on their schedule coming up. So if they lose 2 of those games, that probably does take them out of the top 12. But there's so much, like what we saw this past week of 5 of the top 11 teams losing. There's still so much ahead of that there's so much of that could still happen this year. That's where I could see a 3-loss team somehow making their way into that. Because if let's just say if Georgia loses 2 of those 3 games and Georgia has losses to Alabama, Texas, and Tennessee on the year, those are 3 high-quality losses that they could possibly have. And they probably would have an argument against a 2-loss team, from another conference.
I agree with you. I think while people wanted to try and exclude the SEC, man, when you look at the schedule and just look at their interconference, so you could lose 2 games in the SEC, and I think you still would be better off than some of the other teams who think they're good. What the SEC is doing, they're scheduling soft up front because they know they can't lose up front because they're going to lose at least once and probably twice once their league schedule gets underway. I don't know if you can say that about the Big Ten or the ACC or the Big 12. I don't think you can say that about those schools. I know everybody's like popping champagne corks about Indiana. They're undefeated. And my thing is, oh, yeah, why don't you come over here and play some SEC teams? We'll see how far that goes.
One of the big things that it might take a few years to figure out the impact that these conferences now are having with the expansion is going to be some of the travel that's involved with that. You Michigan this past weekend had a conference game at Washington. Miami went. And you're seeing these schools, these universities now that are having to figure out not only the travel of the players and to get out there, but there's a lot that's going into this just from top to bottom in these. Organizations. That's what these are. These are professional organizations. These football teams that are having there. Alabama football is $1 billion franchise right now. So you're having these teams. I don't know if you saw, like Miami had to take their equipment, took trucks for their equipment 3,000 miles all the way up to Cal for that. These are things that these schools are still trying to figure out for the transportation of how to get everything they need to these games.
Well, here's another thing that I think you're going to see more of. If you're going to go out on the West Coast or you're going to be away from home, you might just want to set up shop and stay out there. and bring your tutors, bring your teachers, because now with so many things being able to be done online, you might be doing more studying and more classwork online compared to being in an actual classroom. And if that's not the case, think about all the tutors and all the people who are part of the academic side of this. They're going to have to travel too. So you're going to see teams, and I'm sure there are also some teams that have already done it, where they're probably taking 2 planes. Yeah. With all the people, all the personnel that they're going to have. And you mentioned the equipment alone. You can't put that on one plane anymore like you used to. So I just think that you're right. This is something that it all sounded like a great idea until you had to actually live through it with regard to your travel schedule and just the logistics that come with it. And I think there's some teams that are going to have to step back and really reevaluate what they're doing, because now throw in the transfer portal, and now we have the travel issue that's going to come into play, and that's going to increase a lot of athletic departments' budgets well beyond anything they fathom.
And I think too, one of the big things that you're going to have are these ADs and these conferences that schedule. Your idea of just having them go out there. And we see that in the NFL. We see that a lot of times in the NFL. Say the 49ers have a game in Philadelphia one week and New York the next week. They'll just stay out in the East Coast somewhere, and they'll practice there. They'll rent out a facility for the entire week, and they'll stay there. How long is it going to take some of these athletic directors and some of these conferences to look at a school like a Washington that's now in the Big Ten and say, hey, you have Michigan this week. You know what? We're going to give you Minnesota. You're going to be at Minnesota the next week, and you just find a place to set up out there. Yeah, you do it that way. And instead of going back and forth, because so often in college sports, we see, hey, you're home one week, you're away the next week, home one week, and it alternates. How long before, you know what? Hey, you got 3 home games. Okay, now you're going to go on the road for the next 2 weeks. And figure that out and just have these. And what's the cost of these facilities or these organizations going to be if you're having to rent out an entire place for a full week?
Yeah, I think you're spot on, Joe. And I think this year will be a very good test module for them to figure out what they're going to do in the future. And I think that's something that all the ADs need to sit in a room and figure out how they're going to schedule for the very purpose you're talking about. So you might be you might be on the road for 2 weeks in a row compared to going back and forth. And that'll take its toll on teams too. That's why I said earlier, I don't think we'll see another undefeated team run the table. I just think because of all the things that have come into it, whether it's the conference you're in or the logistics of travel, the transfer portal, things of that nature, I think an undefeated team is a thing of the past.
And it makes it even more amusing that in the last, it's been less than 10 years that these people running college football said that we couldn't have a playoff and couldn't do these things because of the academic factor that it would take.
Nobody talks about academics anymore. When was the last time you heard about a guy who was academically ineligible?
You hear about the guys that have those 4.0 GPAs and are graduating early. You hear about those guys.
Yeah.
But you don't hear about the guy that's saying, hey, he's struggling in algebra. He's taking sophomore high school level algebra this year, and he's struggling in that, but they found a way to let him play this weekend.
Yeah. And when you get to like your junior year, if you're a pro, you probably don't even go to class, because by the time they catch up to you, the season's over with.
Right.
And I wonder, and I don't know if there's any hard data on this, how many guys who we know are can't miss players actually go to class in the second semester, because normally now they don't even play in a bowl game because they're trying to get ready for the combine, and they're just training all the way up to the draft. And the draft is in April. Fucking hell, school's out in May. Yeah. So a lot of these guys don't. And I know it exists in basketball. I know second semester, guy can be on academic probation, but he doesn't care. He ain't going to class anyway because his thing is, I'm trying to get drafted. And at some point, we can raise our hand and say, well, wait a minute, I thought this was all about academic. No, it's not about that. They could care less.
Right.
They could care less.
Claibs, on to the NFL Week 5. 1 game left in the schedule for this week. Saints and Chiefs tonight. That game in Kansas City. Chiefs looking to go 5-0 on the year. as only Minnesota undefeated, along with the Chiefs. That Minnesota 5-0 is still a huge surprise. The fact that they just keep on winning this year up in Minnesota with Sam Darnold as their quarterback, I think that has to be the biggest surprise of the entire NFL.
I would agree. And I think because we saw Sam Darnold not in a very good situation in New York, and a lot of people didn't think he could play. It's amazing when you have a good offensive line and some weapons to work with, and how well he's adjusted to the point where, as you just mentioned, they're 5-0, and their offense is legit. Jefferson is one of the best receivers in the game. Their running game has been more solid than I think anyone thought. And you know what? They can tackle some people too. I mean, this is a very well-rounded team. I mean, they haven't stumbled into this record. They've earned it.
Yeah. Also around the NFL, the parity continues throughout. Saints tonight 2-2 on the year. Cowboys win last night 3-2, moved to 3-2. Steelers 3-2. It's going to be another case. I mean, 10-7 is probably going to get you into the playoffs, but there's going to be a huge clump of teams that's going to be around there to kind of figure out the seeding of it when it's all said and done as we get to as we move on in the season.
Yeah, you're right. But that's the NFL, man.
I love it. Yeah.
You know what? Every game counts, especially those last 3 or 4 weeks of the season where everybody thinks they've got a shot. And it'll be no different this year because of the teams that we're talking about. And the challenge, though, I think these teams are all fairly even, Stephen, because this is about injury. Who can stay healthy?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the key. I mean, and I look at Kansas City, and I'm scratching my head on how in the hell are they in the position they're in, because they're not that good. I mean, we talk about weapons, and it starts with Mahomes. Kelsey's been average, and I'm sure most people outside of Kansas City can tell you who the other 3 receivers are.
Yeah,
they have a very little of a running game. Their defense has been good, not great, and they're going to need some help. They're going to need some help before the trade deadline and find some other players, because they can't win with what they have on the field right now. Because right now, I think Baltimore is the best team in the game right now. What they're able to do. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think Baltimore is a playoff team because, A, they can run the football. B, Lamar is so unique. And C, once their receivers really start to build up some real cachet, they're going to be a pretty good team. Defensively, they still have a couple of chinks in their armor, but their special teams are as good as anyone. So right now, I think Baltimore, and you throw the record out of the window, I wouldn't want to play Baltimore in the playoffs.
No, come playoffs, yeah. I mentioned Minnesota being the biggest surprise right now at 5-0. Would you look at that NFC right now? The Commanders being 4-1, I think also has to be talked about a little more with Jaden Daniels, who I remember talking about before the draft. Heck, I remember talking about it when he was with LSU and just ran through Mizzou last year, that he looked like he was the best quarterback and the most athletic player coming out of the draft. And the Commanders seem to have found their quarterback of the future right now. But we've seen quarterbacks like him come out and have these great first few years until the league figures them out, and then they kind of come back down to earth. But for right now, it's fun to watch.
Yeah, but here's the thing about him, and you make an interesting point about figuring a team out, figuring a guy out. It's kind of like Lamar. When Lamar came on the scene, they were like, well, wait a minute, we haven't seen a guy like this before. And I think Daniels is taking it to another level because he's been more in a pro offense when he was in college compared to where Lamar came out of Louisville, won a Heisman Trophy. And I easily, I would have made him my first pick, Daniels. And he was the best player I saw last year. But when it's all said and done, the best way you survive is being able to adjust with what the D is trying to do. And I think Mahomes is the best example. A guy who wasn't a first-round pick, as highly thought of as some, he comes into the league and all of a sudden he shows them an aspect that they weren't ready for, and they keep trying to defend him, and he keeps getting better and making adjustments.
Yeah. As I said, Saints and Chiefs tonight. It is also Manning cast tonight. I enjoy watching it on that. Paul Rudd and Archie Manning are the guests, not Arch Manning. It'll be Archie Manning, so their dad will be on there tonight. Claims I won't be watching Monday Night Football tonight. WWE Monday Night Raw is
that's right.
Is
At
in
Enterprise,
town. Yeah. You going?
For 2 nights. They're here for 2 nights, right?
Monday Night Raw is at Enterprise tonight,
Yeah.
and then WWE NXT is at the Factory tomorrow night.
That's right. Yeah, I knew they were in town. I knew they had 2 events in town because one of the wrestlers I had a chance to interview in a pregame show that you and I talked about. And you know what? I have a dinner I have to go to, so I probably won't be able to go. But I thought about it.
Tomorrow night, though. But
I
mean, you says tonight. Tomorrow night, though, sounds like you're free.
No, I got something going tomorrow. I got
okay.
something going tomorrow. Listen, you know what? I was telling somebody this yesterday. For a guy who's supposed to be off because of we don't have any games to do. There are people who are finding a lot of things for me to do.
That sounds like it, yeah.
And some of it is fun. Some of, like yesterday, we went to a winery. We went to Mount Pleasant Winery. We got a bus because there's no way in hell I'm driving to Herman, Missouri with all those winding roads. And I had a ball. And this was not on my radar until we got eliminated. And somebody said, "Hey, we're going to Mount Pleasant. You want to go?" And I was like, "Yeah, I got nothing going." So I did that and had a great dinner last night somewhere else. But man, yeah, everybody's got my dance car is getting full by the day.
That's a shame that you're going to have to miss both those shows. I've never been to the Factory. I honestly, I don't know where the Factory is.
It's out in Chesterfield. Rammer and I, we're going there to see ZZ Top. They're there in early November. Rammer and I are going out there for that.
All right. Well, I'll let you know how it is if I didn't know it was in Chesterfield.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to that's out Marisek way. I'm going to have to see if he wants to join me out for that one.
I think the next stop
all the way out
beyond
there.
the Factory.
Hey, let's take our final break, come back, quickly wrap things up here on Lunch with Claibs and Joe, powered by Gray Bar, driven by Munganess St. Louis Acura.
Are you ready for a challenging and rewarding career? There are quality jobs in the construction industry.
I got out of college and my career choices were very limited, and this provided me with a plan for the present and the future at the same time.
I actually have a bachelor's degree in psychology, and I was making less than I make as a first-year apprentice painter.
I didn't go to college. I have no college debt. I make more money than the majority of people I know that went to college.
Take your first step towards a rewarding career. Visit stlouispdf.org.
Final few minutes here of Lunch with Claibs and Joe. Claibs, tomorrow is the start of the NHL season. Kind of just jumped in on us out of nowhere. Blues starting their season on a Tuesday afternoon in Seattle. Kind of confused about the way the NHL is going about scheduling things. You'd think they want all eyes on primetime games, but no, let's throw a game on at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when people are at work, at school, and start the year in Seattle.
I don't get it. It's 1 o'clock out in Seattle. And so it's a matinee game for them. I don't get it. I don't even know where the Blues on. I know that ESPN's carrying his first couple of games, but I don't know anything about the Blues schedule as far as who's actually. I don't even know. Is Bally's carrying the Blues this year?
I mean, what I don't. Yeah, we didn't even talk about the Bally's thing with the Cardinals either. That's that's another thing to watch this offseason. That's going to be confusing to many people.
Yeah, it's confusing because Bally's is trying to play games with regard to wanting to renegotiate or they'll drop them. And I want to be careful on how I phrase this. If they want to move on, I think that'd be fine. I think they're Cardinal fans. They're going to follow the Cardinals no matter where they go. The challenge is because we've been comfortable with Bally's and being able to find the games, it might be a little bit of a challenge. So my only hope is this. I don't know where the Cardinals are going. They haven't told me. But I just hope that the people who I see on Bally's TV and Jim Hayes and Brad Thompson and Chip Carey and Alexa Datt and Scott, I hope they're all part of what they do next.
Well, we can all listen. We'll always be able to listen to you though on the
Yeah.
radio side of things. That's not going anywhere.
I ain't going anywhere.
What are your expectations for the Blues this season?
Man, I think they're going to be better. I've got to know Drew Bannister a little bit here over the last few months. An interesting gentleman with regard to what he looks for. I think they're going to be faster. They're going to play a little bit more of a physical game. And we'll see. I think it's going to take a little time. They're going to be as good as not Thomas and Cairo. Those guys, you can put them down. They should both have 80 points this year. I think what the key is going to be is obviously special teams, where they weren't very good at. And I think what their fourth line looks like. You got to be better. You got to get something out of the fourth line. You have some competition as far as your blue line's concerned. I would like to see them be more physical. That doesn't mean they have to fight every night, but they do need to learn how to play the body and play a heavy game. And they got to be better skaters. I mean, they only had a half a dozen guys who could actually skate. The rest of them act like they got a new pair of skates that haven't been sharpened. They got to be better in that element. And they just have to commit more to the body. They have to play a heavier game than what we've seen in the last couple of years.
They, as we mentioned, Blues season starts tomorrow night.
Tomorrow afternoon,
3:30 here local time, 1:30 out in Seattle for the Blues and the Kraken. So they start tomorrow, and then they'll stay out on the West Coast, San Jose and Vegas, all in the first few days of their 2024-2025 season.
I'm anxious to see the NHL because there's a lot of change that took place in the offseason with regard to trades and free agency. This is a league where it's hard to repeat as champion because everybody's so close. So I'm looking forward to it. This is going to be a fun season. And I hope ESPN does a better job of putting on games than what they did last year. They've been the worldwide leader in every other title they like to claim, but I thought their hockey coverage was awful. It was really hard to watch from a broadcast standpoint, and I hope they get that straightened out and be more consistent on when you can find the games.
Claibs, we get ready to wrap up the show today. All of this free time that you have now, what do you have lined up for this week?
Okay, today I'm having dinner with my radio colleagues. Tomorrow I'm having dinner with some friends I haven't seen in a while. I think Fast Eddie is on the schedule this week, and I have another dinner on Thursday with a friend of mine who made a bet with me last year that Ali Marmol wasn't coming back. And I bet him dinner anywhere in town that Ali Marmol was going to be back. And not only was he back last year, he's going to be back this year. And so I'm going to have dinner with him on Thursday. And I'm not sure what I have going on Friday, but it's been a busy week. It's going to be a busy week. Be a good week, rewarding week. I get to the gym because I'll eat myself into oblivion. Oh, man.
I got WWE the next couple nights, Claibs.
And then I'm gonna try and watch some games. I mean, this baseball playoffs is fun, man. I mean, I like to be part of it, but the one cool thing about the schedule was that we saw all these teams.
Yeah.
And I am not surprised by any of the teams I saw that are in postseason.
I am Claibs, I am credentialed for playoff coverage if the Royals make the ALCS or the World Series, or if the Guardians make the World Series. Those were my credential requests that I put in. My ones for the National League, Braves and Brewers have already been eliminated. So I got no rooting interest anywhere on the National League side. So I'd like to go cover, and I'd like to go watch some playoff baseball up close. So that's where my rooting interest lies in these series right now.
Well, here's the one thing that I hope can be consistent is the weather. And we've had pretty good weather for postseason play. That's not always the case. And, for those who don't think that has an impact, you're kidding yourself with regard to that being a distraction, because let's face it, man, nobody wants to play in cold weather or rainy weather, any of that kind of crap. But so far, so good. And let's hope it continues throughout the month of October.
And then Claibs Thursday, Andy and I will be doing, as part of Weekend Joe, another nice size food review. They always get a lot of views on our show. Not sure if you saw this, but McDonald's is coming out with the Chicken Big Mac this week. So yeah, we will be tasting that and reviewing the Chicken
Well, let me
Big
ask you
Mac.
something. How did the Coca-Cola cookie thing go? How'd that go?
I was surprised at how much the cookie tasted, like had the hints of Coca-Cola taste in it. It was shocking to me how they're able to put that taste in there with that. I'm not a soda drinker. I did not enjoy the drink, the Oreo flavored Coca-Cola at all. It was not my thing.
I haven't done soda in years, so I wouldn't know. I think if I drank a soda today, I'd probably pass out. My body would react.
Yeah, that was not good. The cookie, that was interesting. Not something I'm going to go out and buy an entire thing of, but to eat 2 or 3 of them while we were doing the show, that was just fine.
So you didn't have so when people come trick or treating at your house, you won't have any of those standing by.
I won't have those standing by. No,
okay.
No.
Right.
Yeah. All right. That's going to do it for our show today. He is Mike Claiborne. I'm Joe Roderick. This has been another edition of Lunch with Claibs and Joe, powered by Gray Bar and driven by Munganass St. Louis Acura.
Munganass St. Louis Acura has the all-electric Acura ZDX. The ZDX can go up to 313 miles on a single charge, and the DC fast charging lets the ZDX gain up to 80 miles in just 10 minutes. When you lease an Acura ZDX, you can save up to $7,500 with a federal EV lease credit. Or you can buy the new ZDX and get 0.9% for up to 72 months. Come on in to Munganass St. Louis Acura and take a look at the new ZDX for yourself.